Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into the world of AI, and we're going to be doing it with a little help from the former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt.
Yeah.
You sent us this really fascinating interview he did with the Diary of a CEO on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
It's packed with insights about AI's potential,
hmm
the risks that come along with it, and how AI is really going to reshape pretty much everything.
It is really something, isn't it? Schmidt's perspective is particularly interesting because of his background.
Yeah.
He built Google into the tech giant it is today. So he's got this firsthand view of what it takes to innovate
Yeah.
and lead. And now he's applying all that to AI, which is arguably the biggest technological shift we've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, you're right. And what I think is so great about this deep dive is that we're not going to be just focusing on the tech side of things. We're also going to explore what Schmidt learned about building a company, his dynamic with Larry and Sergey, and really how all his insights on AI apply to you, no matter what field you're in. So to kick things off, Schmidt emphasizes the need for what he calls a diva to build groundbreaking products. He's talking about that almost visionary leader, like a Steve Jobs, someone who pushes boundaries and isn't afraid to be different.
Yeah, and he really uses that term diva to highlight those unique personality traits that are often associated with this type of leader. But here's the thing. Schmidt also points out that even these divas need a counterpoint. He tells this story about Sergey Brin, Google's co-founder. Sergey would apparently burst into strategic meetings and completely overturn everything that Schmidt and Larry Page had planned.
Wait, so they would have this plan, and Sergey would just come in and be like, nope, we're doing it this way.
Pretty much. And according to Schmidt, Sergey was usually right. You know what's so fascinating about that is it challenges that classic lone genius narrative. It suggests that even the most brilliant minds need someone to challenge their assumptions, offer a different perspective, and push them out of their comfort zone.
So what you're saying is every team needs a Sergey, someone who isn't afraid to disrupt the status quo, even if it means going up against the diva. But how do we find our Sergey? What qualities should we be looking for in that person?
That's a great question, and it's definitely something we can all consider. Within our own teams, think about the people you work with. Is there someone who consistently brings fresh ideas to the table? Someone who questions the way things are done? Who isn't afraid to advocate for a different approach? That person could be your Sergey. It's not necessarily about finding someone who's always right. It's more about finding someone who encourages critical thinking and challenges the team to look at things from different perspectives.
I like that. That's such a valuable insight, especially in today's rapidly changing world. We need to be adaptable and open to new ideas, and having that Sergey figure can be crucial for innovation and growth. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about why Schmidt believes that AI is different from any other technological advancement. He uses pretty strong language. He's actually framing its arrival as a question of human survival.
Right, and it's important to understand that he's not just talking about AI's potential benefits, which are definitely significant. He's deeply concerned about the potential for misuse, like AI being weaponized or used for mass surveillance and control.
It's kind of a sobering thought.
It is.
It's like we're stepping into uncharted territory, and we need to be prepared for the potential consequences. But what I find particularly interesting is that Schmidt is also worried about the opposite, that we won't adopt AI fast enough to solve some of humanity's biggest problems. He sees AI as a potential solution for global healthcare, education gaps, all these things that affect pretty much everyone.
That's right. It's that double-edged sword aspect of AI
Yeah.
that makes it so compelling and frankly a bit scary. It has the potential to both elevate humanity, but also to create some very significant risks if it's not handled responsibly. And this brings us to a point where Schmidt gets really candid. He openly admits that Google, despite being a pioneer in so many ways, missed some major opportunities. He specifically mentioned social media, where they actually had early tech similar to Facebook, but they didn't capitalize on it.
It's surprising, isn't it?
Yeah.
You think of Google as this all-seeing, all-knowing tech giant, and yet they missed the boat on something as huge as social media.
I know. But what I find really interesting is that Schmidt takes responsibility for that. He doesn't shy away from acknowledging Google's missteps. And I think there's a valuable lesson there for all of us. Even the most successful individuals and companies make mistakes. And it's really how we learn from those mistakes that matters.
Even someone like Eric Schmidt, at the helm of Google, has regrets. Makes you wonder if maybe we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves when we miss an opportunity. But this isn't the only surprise that Schmidt reveals. He also admits that he was kind of caught off guard by the speed of development in generative AI. particularly with the rise of ChatGPT.
Yeah, he actually uses the phrase blindsided to describe his reaction. He explains that while Google was laser-focused on the underlying technology, what he calls the engine room of AI, OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, was making a key breakthrough. They figured out how to use human feedback to dramatically improve AI models, and that really changed the game.
So while Google was busy building the engine, OpenAI figured out how to steer the car.
Exactly.
And that raises a really crucial question. How do we manage this AI explosion? It's clearly moving faster than many anticipated. And Schmidt paints some pretty vivid pictures of what could happen if we're not careful.
You know, he talks about self-driving cars making life-or-death decisions, AI systems controlling critical infrastructure, algorithms shaping our thoughts and behaviors in ways we don't even fully understand. It's both exhilarating and terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
But what I find fascinating is that Schmidt, despite being this tech leader, isn't advocating for a hands-off approach to AI. He actually proposes that we need to establish what he calls guardrails, specific points where human intervention is absolutely essential. He even suggests that we need to be prepared to literally pull the plug on AI systems in certain situations.
Whoa, hold on. Pull the plug. When would we ever need to do that? That sounds pretty extreme.
I know it does, but Schmidt highlights a few scenarios where this might be necessary. One is what he calls recursive self-improvement, where AI starts redesigning and improving itself at an exponential rate, potentially surpassing human comprehension and control.
So the AI could essentially become so smart that we don't even understand how it's thinking anymore. That's straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It sounds like it. But the possibility is very real. And if we reach a point where we no longer understand how AI is making decisions, especially when those decisions could have life or death consequences, having a kill switch, so to speak, might be the only way to ensure safety.
That's a chilling thought, but I can see why Schmidt raises this point. It's about recognizing that we're dealing with something incredibly powerful, and we need to approach it with caution.
Are there any other scenarios where he thinks we might need to hit the off switch?
Yes. He also mentions the risk of AI creating its own language, essentially becoming unintelligible to us. So imagine an AI system developing its own code and communication protocols that we can't decipher. It would be like trying to have a conversation with someone who's speaking a language we've never encountered before.
Yeah.
We would lose the ability to monitor, understand, and ultimately control its actions.
Okay, now that's seriously creepy. It's like we're creating something that could potentially slip out of our grasp and become a completely separate entity. It makes you wonder, are we playing with fire here? It's a valid question. And I think it highlights the need for some really thoughtful and ethical considerations in AI development. But Schmidt also mentions a third scenario that's equally concerning: the emergence of what he calls AI agents.
Agents? What does that mean?
He's referring to AI systems with memory that can communicate and coordinate with each other. So imagine a network of AI agents, each with its own set of goals and abilities, interacting and learning from each other in ways we can't predict. This could lead to emergent behaviors that are completely unforeseen and potentially dangerous.
It's like opening a Pandora's box of potential outcomes, isn't it? We might create something beneficial, but there's also the risk of unleashing unintended consequences that we can't control.
Exactly. And that's why Schmidt stresses the importance of establishing clear boundaries and intervention points early on. It's about acknowledging that while AI has incredible potential, it's a tool that needs to be wielded with wisdom and foresight.
So we've got these potential dangers on one hand, and these incredible opportunities on the other. It's a lot to process. But one question that's probably on everyone's mind is, will any of us have jobs in this AI-driven future?
Yeah, it's a question a lot of people are asking these days. And understandably so. I mean, all these advancements in AI are definitely leading to some pretty big changes in the workplace. It's only natural to feel a little uncertain about what the future holds.
Right, it feels like everyone's worried about robots taking over their jobs. But what I thought was interesting is that Schmidt, despite all of his concerns about AI's potential risks, is actually pretty optimistic about the future of work.
Yeah, you're right. He actually believes that AI will create more jobs than it displaces. Of course, he acknowledges there's going to be some major disruption and a need for people to adapt and learn new skills. He uses the term job-skill mismatch to describe this gap through the skills that people currently have and the skills that are going to be in demand in this new AI-driven economy.
So it's not really about mass unemployment, but more about a shift in the types of jobs that are available. But what does that mean for someone who's been in the same career for like 20 years? Are they going to have to start all over?
Well, it's a valid concern for sure. And Schmidt really stresses the importance of lifelong learning, being willing to adapt to new technologies and new ways of working. I think the key to thriving in this AI-driven world is to constantly be developing new skills and expanding your knowledge base. This could involve taking some online courses,
Hmm.
attending workshops, maybe even pursuing entirely new career paths.
So it's about being proactive
Yeah.
and embracing the change rather than just resisting it. But hey, wouldn't it be great if AI just made us all so wealthy
Yeah.
that we didn't even have to work at all? I mean, that's the whole idea behind universal basic income, right?
Yeah. UBI has definitely gained a lot of attention lately, especially with all the concerns about AI-driven automation. But Schmidt doesn't actually believe that UBI is a viable long-term solution. He argues that human nature, our inherent desire for purpose and meaning, won't allow for a society where most people are idle. I think he believes that even with
Well,
increased automation and abundance, people are still going to crave the satisfaction of contributing to something meaningful.
yeah, that makes sense. It's not just about having enough money to survive. It's about feeling valued, having a sense of purpose. I'm curious, though, how does all this connect to Schmidt's own experience? Building Google, did he apply any of these principles?
Yeah.
About leadership and innovation. During his time at the company,
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the interview goes into some really interesting anecdotes about Google's early days and this unique dynamic between Schmidt, Larry Page, and Sergey Brin. Remember the diva concept we talked about earlier? Well, Schmidt believes that both Larry and Sergey possessed that diva energy, that drive and vision that really propelled Google's growth. But he also highlights the importance of their contrasting personalities and approaches.
you mentioned that Sergey was often the one who would disrupt their plans and come up with unexpected solutions. Was that because of their different roles within the company?
I think it was more about their inherent personalities
Hmm.
and ways of thinking. While Laurie was very focused on the long-term vision and the technical aspects of building a search engine, Sergey was known for his out-of-the-box thinking
Mm.
and willingness to challenge conventional wisdom. Schmidt kind of describes Sergey as the idea guy. He is someone who could see connections and possibilities that others often missed.
So it was this dynamic tension between Larry's long-term vision and Sergey's kind of disruptive thinking. That really helped Google to innovate and stay ahead of the curve. It's amazing how those different personalities, those contrasting approaches, can really complement each other
All right.
and create something truly remarkable.
I know it is. It's a great example of how diversity of thought can be such a powerful driver of innovation. And it goes back to that idea of finding your Sergey, recognizing that even the most brilliant minds need someone to challenge them and push them to think differently.
Now, beyond just the leadership dynamic, Schmidt also talks about some of the practical challenges of actually building a company like Google. He mentions this almost garage band startup culture in the early days, where they were literally building computers with corkboard that would catch fire from the heat.
That's crazy. It's hard to imagine Google, this multi-billion-dollar tech giant, starting out in such humble beginnings. But it's a reminder that even the most successful companies often start from these really scrappy, unconventional roots. It's about having that passion, that drive to create something new, even if it means working with limited resources and facing what seem like insurmountable obstacles.
Like that classic saying, necessity is the mother of invention. They had to get creative. They didn't have fancy equipment or endless funding. But as the company grew, they had to figure out how to maintain that culture of innovation while also scaling up to meet the demands of a global audience. How did they navigate that transition?
It wasn't always easy, and Schmidt admits they made some mistakes along the way. He talks about the challenges of managing what he calls microcultures within a large organization, particularly around sensitive topics like politics. He emphasizes the importance of establishing some really clear guidelines around what's appropriate to discuss in a work setting, especially when it comes to potentially divisive issues.
That makes sense. As a company grows, it becomes more diverse. And managing those different perspectives and viewpoints can definitely get more complex. What other challenges did they face as Google expanded?
One of the things Schmidt mentions is the difficulty of maintaining a strong company culture as the company gets bigger. He believes that the culture is often set by the founders, but it inevitably evolves as a company scales. He uses Google's TGIF meetings as an example, those legendary all-hands gatherings, where employees could ask executives anything. These meetings were initially a hallmark of Google's really open culture, but they eventually had to be scaled back because of leaks and the logistical challenges of managing such large gatherings.
Yeah, it's like trying to recreate the intimacy of a small gathering. When you have thousands of people in the room, the dynamics definitely change. Did they face any other practical challenges, like layoffs, for example? It seems like most tech companies go through cycles of hiring and firing. as they adapt to changing market conditions.
You know, it's interesting. Schmidt talks about Google's approach to layoffs, which was to try to avoid them as much as possible. He believed that laying people off should be a last resort, and that it's often more effective to simply not hire in the first place if you anticipate future cuts. Now, of course, this approach isn't always feasible, but it does highlight Google's commitment to its employees and its desire to create a really stable work environment.
Sounds like they were trying to build the company that people wanted to work for, a place where they felt valued and respected. But beyond treating their employees well, what were some of the other principles that guided Google's success?
Well, Schmidt really emphasizes the importance of focusing on building great products, rather than obsessing over their competition. He believes that trying to replicate what your competitors are doing is a waste of time and energy. Instead, he encourages companies to focus on solving problems in unique ways that really delight customers. He uses Google Search as an example. Their mission wasn't just to be another search engine. It was to organize all the world's information and make it universally accessible.
That classic Silicon Valley mentality, innovate or die. But Google seems to have taken it to a whole new level. They were thinking big, aiming to solve a problem that impacted billions of people.
Absolutely. And that ambition is reflected in so many of the products they've created. They weren't content with just being a search company. They branched out into email, maps, mobile operating systems, so many other areas. It's about constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible and using technology to solve problems that really matter. But as we've been discussing, this drive for innovation needs to be balanced with a clear awareness of the potential risks. And that brings us back to Schmidt's stark warning about the existential threat posed by AI.
Right. His statement that the advent of AI is a question of human survival is not something to be taken lightly. He's not just talking about job losses or economic disruption. He's talking about the very future of humanity. And this isn't coming from some doomsday prophet. This is coming from someone who's been at the forefront of technological innovation for decades.
That's right. And to understand why he's so concerned, we need to really delve into some of the specific dangers that he outlines. He talks about the possibility of AI being used to create deadly viruses, to launch devastating cyber attacks, or even to develop autonomous weapons that could make life or death decisions without any human intervention.
It's a scary thought, AI turning against us, becoming the villain in our own technological narrative.
I know it's a scenario that's been explored in a lot of science fiction, but Schmidt argues that it's a very real possibility that we need to prepare for. And he doesn't just leave us with this sense of impending doom. He actually proposes some very concrete steps we can take to try to mitigate these risks.
Okay, so we've got these potential dangers on one hand and these incredible opportunities on the other. It's a lot to take in. But let's focus on the solutions for a moment. What does Schmidt propose we do to ensure that AI remains under human control and is used for good rather than harm?
Well, he talks about those intervention points we were talking about before. Schmidt believes that establishing those points is crucial. He highlights 3 specific scenarios where we might need to be prepared to actually intervene and even pull a plug on AI systems.
Right, those scenarios were recursive self-improvement, where the AI is getting smarter at an exponential rate, AI developing its own language, and the emergence of these interconnected AI agents that could act in really unpredictable ways. But how do we actually put those guardrails in place? What would that look like in the real world?
Well, it's a really complex challenge, and there's no easy answer. Schmidt suggests that we need to start by fostering a global dialogue about the ethics and governance of AI. He argues that we need to develop international agreements, regulatory frameworks to ensure that AI development is aligned with human values and doesn't pose an existential threat.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the ethical and social implications too.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that AI is not just another tool. It's a technology that has the potential to fundamentally reshape society. And we need to treat it with a corresponding level of care and consideration.
And this is where Schmidt actually draws a parallel between the dangers of AI and the threat of nuclear weapons. He says we need to treat AI with that same level of seriousness and caution. It's a pretty sobering comparison.
It is, and it highlights the potential consequences if we fail to act responsibly. But, despite all of these concerns, Schmidt ultimately remains optimistic about the future. He believes that AI has the potential to solve some of humanity's greatest challenges, and it can lead to a more prosperous and equitable world.
Okay, that is reassuring, especially given all the potential downsides we've talked about. But how does he reconcile that optimism with all of these very real risks that he's outlined?
Well, I think his optimism is rooted in his belief in human ingenuity. and our ability to adapt and overcome challenges. He argues that AI is ultimately a tool that can be used for good or for evil, and it's really up to us to make sure that it's used wisely and responsibly.
So it's not about demonizing AI or trying to stop its development altogether. It's about guiding its evolution in a direction that benefits humanity.
Exactly. And to do that, Schmidt really stresses the importance of developing strong, critical thinking skills. In this age of AI, he argues that the ability to discern truth from falsehood, to evaluate information critically, and to think for ourselves is going to be more important than ever in a world where AI is generating vast amounts of information, some of which may be inaccurate or even deliberately misleading.
So it's like we need to level up our mental defenses against this potential onslaught of AI-generated misinformation. But beyond just critical thinking, what other skills does Schmidt believe will be essential in this AI-driven world?
Well, he places a lot of emphasis on the importance of human judgment, morality, and creativity. Even in the world where AI is becoming increasingly sophisticated, he argues that these qualities will actually become even more valuable. As AI takes over more routine tasks, he believes that AI can actually free us to focus on what makes us uniquely human, our ability to think critically, to empathize, to create, and to solve complex problems that require more than just raw processing power.
It's interesting how he frames AI not as a replacement for human capabilities, but as a way to enhance and amplify them.
Yeah, I agree. He even makes this really provocative statement. He says, even with an AI that has an IQ of 1,000, he would still prefer to rely on human judgment for matters of morality and ethics.
Wow, it really suggests that even in a world of super intelligent machines, there will always be a need for human wisdom and compassion. So given everything that we've discussed today, what's the one key takeaway for our listener? What's the one thing you hope they walk away with from this deep dive?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is that AI is not some distant science fiction concept anymore. It's here. It's powerful. And it's already changing the world as we know it. And it's not just about understanding the technology itself. It's about recognizing the profound implications it has for society, for the future of work, and for what it means to be human in this age of intelligent machines.
Right, and it's not about being afraid of AI or trying to resist its progress. It's about engaging with it thoughtfully, critically, and proactively. It's about shaping its development in a direction that aligns with our values and our aspirations as humans.
And to do that, Schmidt emphasizes the importance of betting on yourself, taking risks, embracing new challenges, continuously developing new skills and knowledge. He even shares his biggest regret, which was not taking enough chances when they were presented.
It's a reminder that even someone like Eric Schmidt, who's achieved incredible success in the tech world, has moments where he looks back and wishes he had been bolder. So the question for you, dear listener, is this. Are you ready to step into this new world, this AI-driven future that's unfolding before us? Are you ready to embrace the challenges and the opportunities that it presents?
It's a world that's full of uncertainty, but it's also a world that's brimming with possibilities. And I think, as Schmidt suggests, the key is to keep betting on yourself, keep learning, keep adapting, and keep striving to make the most of this incredible technological revolution. That's really the essence of thriving in the age of AI.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into AI. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic and a fresh stack of sources to explore. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.